Hello and welcome. This is a re-record of today's first lecture. I had a microphone issue, so unfortunately I will be remaking the video. I'll probably end up going a little bit faster through these slides than I did in class today, but hopefully what we can accomplish here in this video is an introduction to the course, an introduction to some of the policies, get a look at Carmen, and then maybe get a quick introduction into some of our material. So, quick introduction to me. I'm Dr. Steve Kroner, the instructor for the class. Very excited to be with you this semester. I'm originally from the Ohio area, originally from the Youngstown area. I went to Ohio State for undergrad. That's me and my family in front of the stadium last year. This picture down here in the corner is me at my grad school alma mater, Cornell University, where I got my PhD in chemistry. Visited the NFL Hall of Fame this year, decked out in our Browns gear. There's my dog in his Browns jersey. His name is actually Nick Chubb. We just call him Chubb. And our cats Molly and Tipsy. So pleased to meet you guys. Very excited to get to know you this semester. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Hopefully we can get most of them answered here today, at least for the lecture, homework, recitation part of the course. I'll be talking a little bit about how the lab is taken care of by our lab staff and some announcements coming from those folks, and you'll get situated in lab next week. Okay, so how to set up your e-text and online homework access. There's a link in Carmen called Access Pearson. Give that a click, follow the prompts. If you need some help, there's a start of term tasks link in Carmen on the main page. It has some helpful information on setting up your account if you run into any issues. Access Pearson link may not work well from iPads, especially in the Canvas app. So you're probably going to want to use a laptop if you have one. At the very least, try the browser and an iPad if you have to use an iPad for accessing the Pearson textbook and online homework platform for the class. The online homework and textbook access is paid for through your student fees, so you should never have to input a credit card to pay for this access. If you find yourself needing to pay for the service, probably went awry somewhere. Check some of the help files on Carmen, check that start of term tasks, let us know if we can help you get your access set up. How do you get these slides? If you're trying to follow along with these slides, just go to Carmen, go to modules, go to the lecture slides module, and then look for the link for this file. I'll show you how to get to that a little bit later. How do I get lecture videos after class? I'll be putting them in that lecture videos page, posting links. I also have a YouTube page. You're welcome to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you'll get probably notifications whenever I upload videos after class. Usually an hour or so after class, you'll see videos go up. I do plan to record and post lecture videos throughout the semester. I highly encourage lecture attendance. If you can't attend or if you want to rewatch a video, I highly recommend trying to get caught up for each lecture before the next lecture afterwards. Try not to let all the lectures build up because you might find it's hard to put all the information together before our midterms. And I like to, I mentioned in class, and I'll say it again here, that, the material in and of itself doesn't seem challenging until you're sitting down trying to learn it all at once. 3 weeks worth of material the night before a test is going to be pretty hard to digest. But if you learn it slowly as we go throughout the course, I think the reason why we take a lot of classes here in a setting like this is it's not that easy to read through and understand and comprehend several chapters of a physical science textbook. Same thing with biology, math, physics operate this kind of way, where it's going to take you a while to learn these concepts and to practice them and to be able to get to a level where you can solve problems that we want you to solve on exams. If it were as easy as just studying a study guide and then taking a test, and if it were that easy, I'm not sure we'd need to be in a room like this in a university taking this type of class. Do labs meet this week? So labs are not meeting this week, but there's this, labs are not meeting this week, but our recitations did meet yesterday, but not for attendance. So if you weren't able to get the yesterday's recitation, don't worry, you didn't miss any assignment that's necessary for credit. You may have missed some information that's useful to hear, so we'll be uploading a video to the recitation page. You can find a module for that. I'll show you how to get to it later as well. But there's a module for recitations, I'll be putting a video up soon that goes over the activity that the TAs were walking students through this week, so that you can get that information if you weren't able to attend, or if you just want to hear it again. Now, speaking of recitations versus labs, your schedule has a bit of a typo, if you will. It shows both your lab and your recitation meeting as quote-unquote lab meetings. So the longer meeting, the 3-hour lab meeting, is your real lab. That's going to be in Celeste Lab, second or third floor. You're going to be in a nice brand new renovated lab space that has been opening slowly. We've been renovating 2 labs per floor. There's 6 labs on each floor. We've been renovating 2 labs at a time for the last, I think, 2 years. So this is the first semester where we've have all the labs now reopened and renovated. And the spaces look so much better than what they used to. Hopefully when you walk into lab, you're excited, and as excited as we are to be able to take advantage of these new spaces. But labs meet for the first time next week. So your lab in Celeste, your 3-hour block, does not meet this week, so don't worry about going to lab. There won't be anybody there, and we'll get you caught up to speed and introduced to your lab topics next week when you have that scheduled 3-hour meeting. If you miss a lab, look at your lab syllabus, look at the lab announcements on what to do. If you miss a recitation, you get 1 assignment drop. The first one doesn't count towards a drop. So we start graded assignments. We'll show we'll go through the syllabus and take a look at the schedule in a moment. But the first graded activities next week. For the graded activities, you get 1 drop. So my lectures here held in person. I screen capture the videos from class. I make them available through YouTube. So look for these to post after lectures. Again, try to keep up on a lecture-to-lecture basis. Highly recommend that. And if you also incorporate some reading, you can see, this is getting a little bit ahead, but there's reading assignments that'll help you hopefully keep in tune with what we're covering in class in terms of the textbook, and some problems you can be looking at that then kind of link up to our post-lecture assignments that you'll be working on as part of our required homework. I have office hours Monday and Friday, 9 to 10 after class. Essentially, as soon as lecture's over, I'll head up to my office. So if you have any questions right after class, quick question, just come up, ask me after class. If you have a more detailed question where you might want to sit down and see a solution or go over a couple questions, head up to my office hours. They are in the 2nd floor of this building in McPherson, in a computer lab, or next door in my physical lab, physical chemistry lab that I teach out of. So one of those 2 locations you'll find me. It'll be pretty obvious. Usually one of the doors will be open, or just head up there, look for me 9 to 10 Mondays and Fridays, and then till 11 on Wednesdays. I'm available anytime before or after class for questions too. If you have quick questions that can be answered in the couple minutes before or after class, feel free to take advantage of that time as well. You don't need an appointment to attend office hours, so feel free to drop by as often as you need throughout the semester. TAs hold office hours either in the 170 Celeste help room, and there's also a common floor space on the 2nd floor of Celeste. You'll see this space when you're in your laboratories. If you're on the 3rd floor, I think there's a common space, but I don't think it's as big. I actually haven't been up there since they renovated that space, but there's a nice common area on the 2nd floor, has some whiteboards, has a bunch of tables and chairs. That's where some of our lab TAs will be having their office hours, and then most of our recitation TAs will be in Celeste 170 on the 1st floor, in the back sort of corner of the building. If you know where you got your lab coats, or the 180 Celeste is where you get your lab coats from, that's a stock room. 170s in like the back hallway, kind of on the way out of the building, or the ordinary way out of the building. That exit is currently closed for some sidewalk construction going on. You can meet, again, with any TAs anytime, no appointments necessary. Just drop by when you have questions, and you have access to all of our Chem 1210 and 1220 TAs that you can ask questions to. And you'll be able to find a TA from 8 to 5 p.m. pretty much every day, Monday to Friday. And so if you have quick questions, homework questions, lab questions, I almost guarantee that there's somebody you can easily track down without too much of a wait or hassle during the day to get those questions figured out. Other concerns, there's a resources tab or page in Carmen. I'll show you that in a moment. So online homework, let's talk about some of our homework policies. So the first assignment is due Monday morning, 8 a.m. It's a post-lecture assignment covering some of the topics we'll be discussing in class a little bit today and into Friday. So see the, you can also see that there's ungraded reading assignments. that are listed starting Friday. Those are just to show you what sections we're covering in class. Also, they give you a link into the text, to the text, so you can easily find those sections that are being covered. These are ungraded, they're just for your practice. You'll also see a couple like practice using mastering chemistry assignment is listed as being quote unquote due, but it's just for practice. And there's also like a chemistry primer, like a chemistry review problem set if you want to check that out. It's also ungraded in terms of points, but might have some useful topics that you could revisit if you wish to look at that assignment. And you could look at those even after their due dates. So the due dates are just there to kind of say, hey, if you want to do these, there's a suggested due date. If you want to look at them after the due date, you're more than welcome to as well. Again, the reading assignments and then those introductory assignments are ungraded. The first graded assignment is due as the post-lecture 2 assignment due Monday morning. Homework assignments will generally be covering the previous lecture. Sometimes they cover previous lectures, so we get a little bit review on some of our questions as we go throughout the semester. Most of the questions you're going to find are multiple choice. So multiple choice questions, if there's, say, 5 choices, then it's 20% off per attempt. If there's 4 choices, it's 25% off per wrong answer. So hopefully you're confident in your answer on these. If you want to be extra confident, what I highly, highly recommend is if you look at the reading section for a given lecture, there's practice exercises, there's practice exam questions you'll find in the reading, and there's reading questions. A lot of these are multiple choice based, and you can check out those questions in the text. And then the homework questions I'm choosing are very similar and analogous to those questions. So if you attempt them, understand them in the reading, I guarantee when you get to those in the homework, you'll find those problems to be a very easy and doable exercise. So hopefully you're finding you're getting very high scores on your homework. If there's open-ended questions, it's like 3% off per attempt. There's 1% deduction for each hour late on your assignment, but every problem that you do ahead of the deadline, you get 100% of the credit for. So if you do like half your assignment before the due date, you get the full credit for that half of the assignment. It's only on the points you earn after the deadline that you're subjected to a 1% penalty per hour late. So if you have a question that you're stuck on, that you can't figure out with your own, with your book and your notes, if you're really stuck on a question, I would just wait till lecture, hopefully get it answered, talk to me before or after class or in office hours or whatever. If you're an hour or two late on submitting a question, it's only like a 1 or 2% deduction. So just 1% off per hour late, only on the points in the problems that you submit after the deadline. The max penalty is set at 60%. If you forget to do an assignment, you can still earn up to 40% on the assignment after the fact. So that's good to know if you happen to just forget about an assignment. If you have a situation that arises that makes you miss a deadline, you get sick, you're, have to go to the ER for something or whatever, you can let me know and I can, see if we can make an extension if that's a reasonable thing to do for your circumstances. So contact me if you miss deadlines. Some of you guys may only be signing up for this class, after the deadline. So if that happens, just let me know and I'll push the deadline out so that you don't have a penalty. Most assignments should take, probably about 30 minutes, give or take, depending probably on how much preparation you've done before the assignment, and then how much of the lecture you kind of took in beforehand as well. So if you came to class and you did some work in the book, kind of went through some of those problems that I was talking about in the reading, understand how to do them, I bet these assignments will take you not even 30 minutes to do. If you haven't watched lecture, been to lecture, haven't watched the video, haven't really done much of the reading, I could see the homework assignments taking a lot longer, but it's really an unnecessary amount of time because, you could have done a little bit of work ahead of time that really would have paid off and taught you some of the concepts, and that's what the struggle is. So I don't know if I highlighted this as much in the lecture portion, but sometimes it's tricky in a class like this to not necessarily look at a problem and try to teach yourself how to do the problem versus see the underlying concept that you should have already known that you're applying in the problem. So when we look at, like, imagine you have a quiz or like a practice test, and like, let's imagine you have a couple questions you don't know how to do. Like, you look at the question, you're just completely stumped. I would say the better course of action would be to revisit the topic, review that section in the book, review some similar problems, understand those, then revisit the problem, and I bet it makes sense. If you only in a vacuum look at the problem you don't know how to solve and try to figure it out, you may not see the forest through the trees. You may not see the underlying piece of content that's really important, and that simple piece of content may be what it is that you're applying, and then could then lead you to understanding a wide range of variations of questions on that topic. So just when you're stumped, simple solution might be review that topic more, either through videos, through the textbook, through other problems, through coming to talk to me to get some help perhaps. Homework problems are similar to those practice and exam prep problems in the book. So I think, again, if you're staying caught up with the textbook and the reading and the problems in the textbook, you'll find the homework assignments very doable. Make sure you're not paying extra for the access. Again, you've already paid for access for the online textbook through your student fees. If you're looking for extra problems, I'll show you some daily quizzes in a moment. And there's also a bunch of end of chapter exercises you can do. There's like a back matter of the book that answers, I think it's like the odd questions are answered in the back. But you can look at some of the end of chapter exercises if you're looking for additional problems to practice. How should you study? Well, I think, like we were talking about earlier, staying caught up with lectures is the best way. So build from what you already know, hopefully. This is a course that does have a prerequisite of high school chemistry or, some physical science in your background. I think it's next to impossible to have graduated high school without having some, lessons on what the periodic table is, what elements are, what makes them different from each other. But in this class, we're going to really build from we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to really define the periodic table as well. We're going to define what chemistry is. We're going to talk about a lot of terminology that you've probably heard before, but the more you're building from what you know, the better. So if you know some of the topics already, that's great, but we will introduce every topic that we cover and hopefully give you enough definitions and terms to understand, and then problems that we can solve with the concepts that we're building. Following the reading assignments will help your study process. So come to lecture or watch the videos, stay caught up with the readings, maybe skim before class if that's helpful for you, maybe do a little bit more thorough reading and problem solving after class. Look at those post-lecture problems to drive home and reinforce some of those lecture topics. As you read, really heavily focus on those self-assessment questions, those exam prep questions. Try to minimize the time that you're confused. Every time we spend 5 minutes staring at a problem we don't know how to solve is 5 minutes we could have spent reading the book or being more productive with our learning. So when we're stumped, let's go revisit something. Let's be active with our learning so that we're not simply staring at problems for too long. And I don't think that'll be too much of an issue if you're, following this basic study approach and what's often called the study method or the study cycle of just, previewing the book, coming to class, doing more thorough reviewing of the book, doing some more thorough problem solving, and maybe some self-quizzing. Some self-quizzing hopefully will be easy with my daily quizzes. I'll show you those, how they're a valuable resource that I provide in my class to give you some feedback on exam type problems as you go throughout your learning in the course. And then rinse, lather, repeat. Let's keep doing this process. And then when midterms roll around, hopefully we're ready to have great success. This book here, Make It Stick, is a great book. So if you're just after a book, you like reading, this book here is a great book on learning strategies from a really scientific perspective and from a cognitive behavioral perspective. One of the authors on the book is a storyteller. The other two authors are cognitive psychologists, and so they really go deep into the weeds of how it is that we learn things. And they use a lot of examples and practical examples from students preparing for the MCAT, students in med school courses. So I think you'll see a lot of the examples they talk about are interesting for those of you who happen to be pre-med. But if you just, really want to learn more about learning, I highly recommend this book. And you'll see that the whole concept of self-quizzing and self-paced and self-guided learning through repetitive practice is really important, and the daily quizzes kind of feed into this idea. It's what gave me the idea to restructure and to model this daily quiz model. All right, well, let's take a look at those daily quizzes that I'm talking about among some other features in Carmen. So there's a few things I wanted to review in Carmen, things like context page, resources, talk about where you get the lecture slides, recitations, those daily quizzes, and then go through the syllabus. And so let's see if we can get this working here. Okay. here we go. Getting this aligned and nice and big is tricky. Okay, so here we go. So let's get into our Carmen page and show a few of the features. I'm in student view, so hopefully this looks pretty similar to what you guys see. I think I'm going to do this in a different order than I did in class today. So let me start with what that handout had said we would start with. There's a start of term tasks. You can click this if you're interested. This shows you a bunch of things that are helpful to getting started in the class for lecture and for lab and for setting up your textbook account. If you run into issues with your Pearson account, come to here. It has like right in here has some topics on getting your textbook situated and some of the settings you might want to look at if you're having issues there. So then we also can look at the contacts page. This is where you can find my information in terms of contact, in terms of office hour locations if you forget them from that slide earlier. Office mostly McPherson 2047 and a computer lab. Our lab supervisors are mentioned. You can see they have an email that's the same address. That email, chem1210labsupervisor@osu.edu, that goes to probably 5 to 10 different people. So when you have a lab question, definitely email that email address because there's a whole team of people that are ready to hopefully get you the help that you need. If you have issues with exams or just something that might be related to the course coordination, exam scheduling is probably the big thing. So if you need a makeup exam, your main contact's going to be Sophie White, our course coordinator. Another contact for SLDS, if you have SLDS accommodations that you want to set up for the course, definitely get in touch with Holly Wheaton. She's a great contact for those resources, or Holly's a great contact for those sources. And there's some textbook support here as well. So with that, what else did we want to check out? I wanted to show the resources tab or the resources page. So campus resources, this resources page here has some links that are useful. So I may have clicked on this wrong in lecture today because this looked a little bit different, but this gives you some help with, or gives you some links for the first year experience. There's a math and stats learning center, all different kinds of learning centers throughout the university, tutoring options. There's SLDS links, there's counseling links, there's mental health support links, all kinds of support links here that if you need these sort of resources throughout the semester, you have these available to you. So check this out if those are things that you're looking for. All right, let's go to modules on how we get lecture slides and recitation activities and things like that. So on our modules, there's a variety of different modules for different parts of the class. The start of term tasks has a module that's kind of what it's built on. The SLDS has some options as well. The lecture component of the course, we have our lecture slides and videos. Let me click on this. Why is it not letting me click? I need to click off it, back on. There we go. Okay, so lecture slides and videos. This link should work now. This wasn't working in class, but this file here is if you want to read about some background information of chemistry that you may or may not remember from high school, but this file here might, or in this little booklet, might just walk you through some of the key aspects of high school chemistry and give you a chance to review some of the concepts and some of the things that we build on in this class. Not absolutely necessary that you read this, but if you just wanted to get a quick background reading of some things from high school chemistry, definitely check this out. So back to some other things in the lecture slide page, my YouTube channel, you can, if you want to subscribe, that's fine. I don't monetize my channel, so I don't care if you like or subscribe to it. But if you do subscribe to the videos, then you'll get notifications after class. So if you want to make sure to get notifications when videos go up, definitely check that out. I will, paste the videos. I'll embed the videos on this page once we have the videos prepared. So you can come back to this page later and find this video here to watch later. This is also where you can get the slides. So this is where our chapter 1 slides can be found. For our introduction, we'll be using the slide packet for the first couple lectures. I don't know why. Oh, it's just opening up here for some reason. It's in a weird spot, but that's how you get to the lecture file that we're following along with here today. The daily quizzes page is here. There's a periodic table that you can use for your work. There's some useful information. The useful information is a little convoluted because the way we tend to give information for like midterms and midterm 1, midterm 2, etc., is to give you the information you need for that exam, as opposed to having like a big booklet of all the information you may ever need. So usually for an exam, you just get whatever information you need for whatever exam we happen to write. But if you look at this document, most of your conversion factors we're going to give you. There's very few conversion factors you have to have memorized. We'll get into the ones that are important and the very few that you should have memorized when we get into chapter 1 a little bit later. But you can see if you have this available, and you can sort of see, okay, like if you need the ton to pound conversion, we would give that to you. We're not going to expect that you have random conversion factors memorized. In terms of what the quizzes look like, I'm going to click on quiz 2 because it's a little bit more representative of what most of the quizzes look like. Quiz 1 has some open-ended questions, but most of the quizzes are multiple choice. And so you get a quick little multiple choice quiz. Most of them are 2 pages, but this one's just a 1-page, 5-question quiz. And then you can check the key afterwards to review your answers to see what the answers were. And it's usually a worked out key as opposed to just the answers. It's not loading, but you probably don't really need to see the answers ahead of time. But you can check the key afterwards to see how you did. So these are just simply a self-guided quiz, ungraded, gives you a chance if you want to do these, get some practice. But if you want to do these, my recommendation is close your books, close your notes, try to get good at doing these problems the first time and really forcing that recall of information. That's how you'll get good at building your long-term memory for these concepts that we're trying to teach. And you can see these continue through the semester. There's, a ton of quizzes, there's chapter review packets, there's some final review packets, and then there's some video keys for some of the videos as well. Not for every quiz, but for probably about half of them, there's video solutions. I don't necessarily recommend that you do all of these quizzes, but if you notice there's a quiz for most days of the week, or every other day there's a quiz throughout the semester that's mentioned. It just gives you a chance, kind of like when you're in the middle of next week, you can say, well, Wednesday's quiz is probably a good quiz that covers the material through roughly that point in the semester. And then when you get to next Wednesday, that quiz will be through roughly where we're at next Wednesday. So it just gives you a chance to review the material, give yourself a self-guided quiz so that you can hopefully get some, some feedback on your learning in the class. And then based on how you're doing is probably how you can figure out if you should do more or less of these quizzes. Like let's say the first quiz you do is next Monday night and you do great on it. Well, maybe, you don't need to focus too much on those quizzes around that lecture, but then let's say you get to next Friday's lecture and it's a little bit more of a complicated topic, and then you look at the quiz that night and then you don't do that well. Well, then maybe we go back to Thursday's quiz, maybe we look at some of the weekend quizzes, maybe we start like fine-tuning doing some more quizzes when we're finding that material to be more challenging. So I just think do more or less as needed, and just use how you do in the quiz and how, like, either can you get through the quiz without looking anything up? That's great. If you really felt like you needed to look something up, try to force yourself to recall the information if you can, and if you had to look it up, just kind of make a mental note that maybe you need to review that topic in more detail later. Okay, so one other module I wanted to show is the recitation module. So just going back to modules, there's a recitation activities page. This is where you'll get your recitation activities. There's a schedule from the syllabus. I'll review the syllabus here in a minute, but this is where we can get our activities. I'll be putting video solutions up for these, and you can find those in this location once those are uploaded. Hopefully tomorrow, might be into Friday, I plan to have a video for this week's recitation for anybody who wants to review that information. Okay, so I think now the best thing to do is to kind of take a quick scroll through a few parts of the syllabus. We have a very long syllabus, but it's mostly not super duper important to review the entire syllabus. But some contact information here for some different folks. We have a calculator policy where for exams you have to use a TI 30 or 83 or 84. We're really strict on this policy, and I'm really sorry that we don't have more calculators on this policy. But I can tell you that if you don't have one of these, that you can either perhaps go buy a TI 30 X2S. They're usually available from Target. They're the ones you probably use a lot in high school. They're like $10 to $15. I would recommend getting one sooner rather than later if you had to go buy a new one if you don't have one of these. There's also a calculator that will be available via Carmen where you take your exams online. I'm trying to figure out how good that calculator is because I've never actually seen it, but I think it's good enough. But I don't know, like, I would definitely recommend having a real calculator though. I think it's probably easier to use probably than a digital calculator that might be available to you. So worst case scenario, you can at least have something to use for the exam, but try to have one of these for specific calculators. And I know it's going to be annoying when you have a calculator that has the exact same functionality as these that we don't allow. And I just apologize for that, but it is a strict policy so you're aware. The next thing I wanted to talk about, as you can see, the syllabus is long, but there's a lot of information, like some information on switching sections and things you can check out if you need that information. I usually say if there's something you're stuck on, maybe a policy, maybe check the syllabus quickly before maybe emailing somebody if you thought of that. The grading is what I want to talk about. Recitation, 10% of the class. Homeworks, 10%. Our midterms, 10% each. Our finals, 20%. The midterms are not cumulative, but the final exam is cumulative. I'll talk about the exam coverage in a moment, but our labs are then 20% of the class. So you can see 60% of our class, a majority of the class are examinations. So we got to get good at doing problems the first time we see them throughout the class. I didn't mention this earlier, but there's a mandatory academic misconduct quiz you should see. Make sure to do that by the deadline. And there's a grade scale in the syllabus. 92 and up's an A, 88 and up's an A minus, 84 and up's a B plus. Please know that we've already accounted for rounding on this grade scale. And just, I'm sorry to say that if you get a 91 and a half, it's going to fall in the A minus range. Our cutoff, I believe, is, and this is historically what we've done, is 0.1%. So if you get a 91.9, that would round to an A, but if you get a 91.89, that's going to round to an A minus, unfortunately. And I know there's always going to be students on the line. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have 10 sections of chemistry, 1210. It's really hard to move lines around for one class relative to another. And we even have some classes that operate with a slightly different grade scale because they have a slightly easier way to get points on their online homework, and their grade cuts are like already starting off higher, and they're not going to lower those either. So just know that these grade cuts are intended to be, really where the final grade lines are going to be drawn. The exam, where did I miss the exam coverage? Maybe that's coming up on a slide. This shows the lecture topics. You can read through those if you wish. Here's our lecture schedule. The reading assignments will give you a finer detail, dates on when we're covering different sections within these chapters. So you can see the reading assignments gives you some of the information like the schedule does too. Our recitation schedule, again, showing that you take your exams in recitation during weeks 4, 7, 10, and 13. And then you get activities the weeks where we're not taking exams. And so the first week intro wasn't graded. Activity 1's our first graded activity. There's a slide that talks about recitation, so I'll talk a little bit more about recitation in a moment. But here's our exam schedule: chapters 1 and 2 for midterm 1, 3 and 4 for midterm 2, 5 and 6 for midterm 3, and 7, 8, and 9 for midterm 4. Something to know, though, is that chapters 1 and 2 are pretty easy. I highly anticipate exam 1's average will be pretty high. I want us to know that chapters 3 and 4 the pace is going to pick up. The material is going to get a little bit more challenging. We have to keep trusting this process of coming to class, using that study cycle process into chapters 3 and 4 if we want to continue to have success. I've seen almost every time I've taught with this type of model that we just blow chapters 1 and 2 out of the water, and then we get a little overconfident and then kind of rebound into midterm 2. So I hope that doesn't happen this semester, but just be aware that probably midterm 1 will go very well, hopefully for most of us. And then if it doesn't, we can easily fine tune our study process and get that studying in tune for midterm 2. But if it goes well, let's keep it going. Let's keep doing the studying. Let's keep doing the study process. Let's keep reading, working problems, doing practice quizzes into midterm 2 and beyond in the class. So that's all the syllabus topics I wanted to discuss. Let's head back into it. So moving on to sort of reiterating some of the information for our exams. Again, the midterms aren't cumulative, so they're just focusing on 1 and 2 for 1, 3 and 4 for midterm 2, etc. But just know we're going to pick the pace up as we continue into chapters 3 and 4 and beyond in the course. Make sure you get one of those 4 calculators if you want a hard calculator to use on exams. And again, just know we're pretty strict on that calculator policy. Exams are mostly multiple choice. There's some numerical entry. They are taken on a device like an iPad or a laptop that you have to have. If you don't have a laptop or an iPad, try to get one. You can check one out if you're on financial aid through a program at OSU. There's some information in the syllabus you can search for if you don't know what that is. But there's a loaner program if you're on financial aid where you can get a device for free. And again, exams weeks 4, 7, 10, 13 in recitation. A little bit more information about the recitation session. You meet for 55 minutes. This is your quote-unquote 55-minute lab meeting, but it's really a small group discussion meeting. Your TAs will lead you through an activity. The activities will be posted a couple days ahead of time. I'll post some keys and videos after class. But hopefully your recitation TA is walking you through some solutions, and you're leaving recitation knowing those problems pretty well. They may not get to every problem on the activity, so that's where the key and the video might come in hand. If you have some questions, you can try to bring them to the start of recitation. I'm sure your TAs will take a couple questions if there are any that the class can benefit from hearing the answer to. So that could be a valuable resource for recitation as well. So the goal with recitations is just to give you an activity to hopefully assist in your learning and practicing of the material that we're covering at that point in the course. So lab is 20% of the course. See the lab announcements. There's a lab team that sort of coordinates the messaging for lab. You're going to want to email those lab supervisors most of your lab questions. You can email your lab TA some smaller questions too, but your lab TA, the lab team, those are going to be your resources for lab. They have a separate syllabus, so they'll review that information with you in lab next week. But be aware that lab users Turnitin. If you have lab reports from students in the past, you're definitely going to want to know that if you copy and paste that report or like part of a discussion, our grading system is going to pick that up and know that it was taken from a student in the past. We're going to know who it was, and it's just not something that we want to have happen. It's not something you want to have happen. So just be aware that we'll be using Turnitin for the lab portion of the class. There's nothing really in the lecture portion where that would become an issue. But also don't fudge your data. It's not good in a science class to begin a class by trying to fit your data to what you think the answer is supposed to be. When you go to lab, just record your data, and that's your data. If you end up with the wrong answer, it's probably not that big of a deal. But it is what it is, So when you record data, if you're supposed to, like, if you know that, you're supposed to get an answer of like 50 grams per mole for something and you got 75, well, if it's 75, it's 75. Just keep your data where it is. Don't try to fudge your data to match some result that you think it should be. If you're unsure about anything, again, check the syllabus. There's, obviously it's a very detailed syllabus. I didn't go through most of the information, and a lot of it we don't really need to know unless we need to know. So if you're in a situation where you're switching sections, you need a makeup exam, check the syllabus. There's information in there about all different kinds of topics. You can check Carmen, you can check announcements, you can email me. I'm happy to take questions by email. I don't get upset if you ask me a question that you could answer in the syllabus. I'll let you know the answer. It's not a big deal. But you can probably answer a lot of questions, though, with some of the resources that are available. Visit my office hours when you have questions. I'm really happy to help anybody with any questions they have that I can help with throughout the course. And then check out those resources and other resources available on that resources page in Carmen. So with this, we can get into a quick little discussion of chemistry being the study of matter. We study the composition of matter, the properties of matter, the reactions of matter in a class like this. And that's really the main emphasis as you go throughout chemistry. As you go from general chemistry, we learn about some very wide range of general topics that kind of range from, you know, like analyzing samples, to analyzing compounds, to understanding the properties, understanding structure, understanding things like acids and bases and what that means. Then you get into OChem, where they get into the structure, property, functions of organic molecules, molecules containing carbon. We try to start building an atomic framework, so we start to think about the structures of molecules, the structures of matter. We like to get into three-dimensional shapes of molecules as we get into chapters 8 and 9 later. Why is chemistry important? Well, primarily because it's a prerequisite that gets you to the next class, that gets you to the next class, that gets you to really what it is you want to do. So maybe you want to be a doctor. If you want to prescribe drugs as a doctor, probably good to understand the structure of organic molecules, the function of organic molecules. And there's a lot of things we're going to need to learn here that help you get to that framework later to understand those topics. So a lot of, if we want to understand biochemistry, we got to understand OChem. To understand OChem, we got to get through some of the lessons we have here in this class. So there's a lot of reasons why, this class is important, but it's really not in and of itself that it's important, but it gets us somewhere downstream where we get to learn more about those things that are interesting by starting with the basics and making sure we have the right framework to understand those deeper sciences. So, I'm going to try to upload a video of where I blew up a balloon in class. It was filled with hydrogen and oxygen. We got to see a chemical reaction take place where we get this like really explosive reaction where like a fireball's formed, goes kaboom. And we're just simply transforming the elements of hydrogen and oxygen in their most stable forms at room temperature of molecular hydrogen H2 molecules for hydrogen, molecular oxygen O2 molecules for O2, and then we combine them with a spark. Then they do this reaction where the hydrogen bond breaks in that molecule, the oxygen bond breaks in O2, and in their place we form the oxygen hydrogen bond, two of them per water molecule, and we make these molecules of water where they come off as a gas from this fireball that takes place from this reaction. There's so many things of this reaction that sort of get us into different topics in the class, like one of them being that delta H symbol. You may not know what that means. You might remember that's the enthalpy change of the reaction, that the reaction's giving off 483.6 kilojoules per mole of sort of reaction that takes place, or per quantity. If those quantities are moles, then that's how much energy was given off by this reaction. So a lot of energy is being given off. Well, where's it going? It's going to the surroundings. In chapter 5, we'll talk about delta H, heat changes of reactions, the heat changes that accompany chemical reactions. To get there, we need to also understand something about stoichiometry. We need to understand what the mole is. I already used the word mole, you may not remember, so we'll define that when we get into chapter 3. We'll talk about quantifying aspects of chemical reactions and balancing reactions also in chapter 3. Here in chapter 1 and a little bit into 2, we'll talk about things like, well, what's a molecule, what's a compound? H2 is a molecule. We have two hydrogens bonded together, and a sample of hydrogen would just have a bunch of those, where you just imagine having an H sphere and another H sphere connected together by some type of bond. That bond we'll talk about in chapter 8, and we'll talk about the nature of the bonding in a little bit more detail in chapter 9 and some properties of bonding. But so we'll get into some of those topics in chapters 8 and 9. But H2 being a molecule, we'll introduce that in chapter 1. We'll talk about it a little bit in chapter 2 as well. O2 is the molecular form of oxygen, so that's the elemental form of the element oxygen. So H2 is an element, it's the element hydrogen, this is a molecule. O2 is the element oxygen in its molecular form, but H2O is a compound that happens to be a molecule. So it's a molecular compound, where if you had a water sample, you'd have all these individual H2O molecules. No, I think we know this, but you may not remember, or you may then find that when we're talking about the difference between something molecular like water, where you have this molecular formula that tells you how many atoms of each element there are in one of those distinct molecules, that's a little bit different than like maybe an ionic compound, where we have NaCl, where NaCl is like a repeating lattice of plus minus in that solid form of NaCl solid. So we'll like contrast ionic compounds from molecular compounds and how we can describe those, understand them, picture them in a atomic and molecular perspective as we get into this class. So a lot of things from this reaction are interesting both to see, but then also in terms of a framework for, introducing a lot of different things that we need to know about, topics that we're going to get into in this class, come up with this one little demo and this reaction. So, atoms, the building blocks of matter, atoms, defined by their nucleus. We'll get into this topic. This slide will be the start of our class on Friday. So this was our stopping point for today. I appreciate those who are watching the video. If you didn't make it to class on Wednesday, I look forward to hopefully getting a chance to meet you on Friday. And I look forward to a great semester. Good luck, everybody.